Hello, I'm Dean Watson from the Watson Health Institute. With me today is Annette Tonkin. Annette graduated from the University of South Australia with a Bachelor of Physiotherapy in 1979, just a few years after myself, so we go back a long time. Annette is the founder and director of Thinking Physio. Her passion lies in uncovering how verbal and non-verbal communication profoundly impacts our patients' response to our guidance and advice. Annette presented workshops and practical lectures of the Watson Headache Institute's National Symposia in Sydney in 2016 and 2017. Welcome, Annette. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure, Dean.
Annette, why physiotherapy?
As a young teenager wanting to do something in sport, I thought, okay, phys ed, that was my first choice. And then I decided I'm going to be a sports physiotherapist, but little did I know back then that there wasn't any sport physiotherapy, not in the undergraduate training and not in private practice. No, but blindness of a young 17-year-old is.
Can you tell us about your journey in the physiotherapy field and what led you to focus on educating physiotherapists and other healthcare professionals about patient communication?
I got out of uni and took a 6-week locum job against the advice of all the clinical tutors at the school. You've got to go into a hospital, you've got to spend 2 years. I said, I didn't do it.
Why am I not surprised?
I saw an advert for a 6-week locum job at Adelaide Sports Science Clinic, which was the first dedicated sports medicine clinic in Australia at the time. I thought, I'll worry about what happens after. And it was an on-the-job interview, as it turned out, with myself and a number of other physios. And they kept me on. But it was the beginning of my journey in sports medicine. And it was, obviously, I didn't do anything else other than sports medicine once I was in that environment. And that led me to the various opportunities within sport. Went on to do our postgrad work with Jeff, and he was very influential in terms of my understanding that it's more about verbal and non-verbal communication. And I still have entrenched in my mind of, can you ask a better question? Which I often now say to other people in my workshops is, can you ask a better question? Because the way you question is critical.
I understood that you actually travelled with some sports teams. So can you take us through your experiences there?
That was a really interesting experience. And as there's a lot of very good clinicians. And I got into the position because I was in the sport and I had the skill of the sport. So on the road, I could cross-train, I could work with the athletes, etc. My sporting ability and my connections got me into those roles. But in each situation with the Australian women's cricket team or the Australian women's basketball team, it was my communication skills that kept me in the job. You've got to be able to adapt. I remember the coach once, we were overseas at the East Asian Games, and one of the players had a back problem, and he was a bigger player, and the coach come up to me and said, "Hey, sure he doesn't put on any weight." And I'm like, "Oh, now I diet thing." But yeah, you just take it on and you do it. So that communication was critical in those roles.
You went to the Olympics?
I did.
Capacity.
As a physiotherapy with the Force.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. It was one of those things that I dreamt of as a teenager. And as a teenager, obviously, I wanted to do it as an athlete. And it was a really interesting question. Somebody asked me, when you had that vision at the Olympics, were you playing a sport or were you on the side? And I was on the sideline when I had that, my visualization, impactful in how you choose to do things on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, I did go to the Olympics and I went to a World Championships in 2 different sports, in different countries.
Into sports, so you were with the Opals?
Opals and cricket. Yeah, women's cricket.
And I think you possibly mentioned a moment ago about pivotal moment that ignited your interest, your passion in patient communication. And what are some common challenges clinicians face in communicating with patients, and how do you address them through thinking for you?
I think the most common one is we're trained to be problem solvers and work out what's the issue. We focus usually on the presenting issue, the most obvious one, which isn't always the main one, and then create a recipe for how you get better. And that doesn't always work. It works very well in highly motivated people, particularly athletes. They just want to be told what to do. And it does work well with them. So if they know why they're doing it, they've got some vision, they are really involved in and are prepared to commit, then that way of working with a patient is very effective. But a lot of patients don't have that. They want to get better, but they struggle with doing what needs to be done to get better. I don't think healthcare professionals in general are very good at making that adaptation from being the expert to being collaborative on how we're going to do this and why might you want to do this, etc.
So, can you take us through your approach to teaching effective communication to our colleagues in the healthcare profession?
Once I know what they want to get out of a workshop, then the number one learning thing that they want to get out of a workshop, I'll put something together based on a combination of NLP and motivational interviewing and language. It's not just one, but I make it very practical. These are principles, but you've got to make it your own. I'm not really into scripts, but the principle behind language and the principles behind listening, which is a critical thing. You'd like to tell people I'm not good because of the general. And then have a go, like practice, review, reflect what worked, what didn't, what you're struggling with, change around, work with different people, because communicating with different people is different. So it's a very practical workshop, and I usually only had 2 or 3 main learning points that I want them to come out with.
In your experience, what factors contribute to successful communication between healthcare practitioners and their patients?
I think there's 3 main components, and they are empathy, curiosity, and listening. So empathy, trying to the best of your ability to understand what it's like to be in the patient's shoes, not how you would be in their shoes with your education and your background and your knowledge and everything's very different. So that empathetic component, that curiosity, rather than they need to be doing this, and that frustration that can often build up when people say they want to get there and don't do anything. So becoming curious, what else is happening? And then the willingness to really listen. And there's a term that goes around, used to hear it a lot, and that's active listening. You can be actively listening and not really listening at all because you're talking to yourself, you're planning what's going to go on. So really paying, or not paying, but giving your attention. Attentive listening is a term that I prefer rather than active listening, which is problem solvers and fixers. That's stepping back to be listening more than, particularly more than what the person says. And as you would know, Jeff was an absolute master. Being able to, what's going on here and beyond what's coming out of the person's mouth.
He was the most patient-centric physiotherapist ever known. And how has a digital transformation impacted your educational method? And what strategies have you employed to reach and engage online?
With COVID, obviously, I went to Zoom, with other people did, and people said they were really not useful sessions, but since COVID's finished, I have gone back to in-person, but I am now really trying to master the art of a digital training.
What have been the most rewarding aspects of your focus on educating colleagues about patient communication?
When I have somebody come back that I've just done one of my workshops and say, I can't believe how much different that they are, or what you said in that workshop changed the way that I work with certain types of individuals. And then one young man who dreaded, he was only out for a year or 2 and really struggled with patients that came in complaining with pain everywhere or in a compensation situation, and taking the time to listen and be empathetic. And he said it was transformative both for the client. He came back to me and he said, this changed my world. He now gets excited about seeing people that nobody else wants to see. He feels better. You get rid of that, oh no, not them again feeling. And it's helping the person.
And the most frustrating?
The most frustrating thing is when people say they want to be better communicators and they want to run a 1 hour, 2 hour, or even 3 hour workshop. And it's like wanting to do postgraduate education that's going to fit into 3 hours and therefore it's all done. It just doesn't happen. So many levels of communication. and just the verbal, the non-verbal, and the words and the listening and how to pick up on things. And so, yeah, that's frustrating. And I guess I'm delivering what people want to the best of my ability and hoping they'll move on to what they need and get excited.
So what is your utopian vision for the world of patient communication?
That we become more collaborative and we work together, particularly, again, the highly motivated people. If you've got patients that are coming back and they're doing whatever they say they're doing, but just keep doing it right because obviously it's working. But with the ones that struggle with bad habits, struggle with negativity, struggle with maybe a lack of visualization, like they have no future, they have no hope. So why do these exercises now? They don't see themselves as better. How you manage that? So giving physios, and not just physios, but allied health and people in general, the skills to be able to bring those sorts of things out and going from being the expert and the patient to being a collaborative coach and mentor scenario. And you create a journey that's not only getting them over their injury, but it's changing their life.
So what do you see are the main challenges moving forward?
There's an understanding of what good communication is really all about, because it's just linked under, well, I've got to be able to talk better. I've talked about just talking, actually about listening, and the time it takes and being willing to put the work in. That's a big challenge because it's like in going to any workshop. You've been to heaps. And you go and you get excited, and this is going to be right. Within 2 weeks, you're back to the same old habits. So that's my challenge. When I started out, I gave lots and lots of information. Now I limit down a lot for practice. So hopefully they'll come out with the beginnings of a new habit.
Yes. So that's a difficult question to ask. So how do you think we overcome these? Look, it's recognising that it's going to take more than a 3-hour workshop, and it's multifaceted, like so many layers that you.
From my perspective, I need to get better at selling the concept of better communication is more than just learning how to talk better. But getting people excited and think, wow, this is really interesting. I never knew about this. So they want to do more. So that's my challenge because they don't know what they don't know. The person who comes in to wanting to be a better communicator has no idea really what this is all about.
So what advice would you give those looking to improve their patient communication skill?
Self-reflection on when they feel they're lacking. Honestly, a really honest self-reflection. And instead of getting frustrated at the patient for not doing something, reflect on how can I communicate that better? What can I do differently? Because you have no control over the patient. You only have control over how you communicate something, and you can change that. So if something's not working, replace frustration with curiosity and self-reflection.
Piece of advice on it. So where can our audience learn more about taking physio and go about contacting you?
My website is thinking.physio. It's pretty easy. So there's a contacts page, or social-wise, LinkedIn is by far the best. I'm not very active on Facebook, but I am active on LinkedIn, and I'll produce blogs and newsletters there. My newsletters are giving people things to try.
The newsletters are great. I do them.
I do.
And newsletters are great. Confidentiality.
And thank you.
And I know firsthand that your work is crucial, and I know you'll continue to advocate for the importance of developing rapport and improving patient communication skills. I do want to thank you for your contribution to the healthcare professions generally in the art of communication with patients, and thank you again for your time today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Ben.